We should have known better. What were we thinking? Trying to do a podcast at like 5 o'clock during free agency.
Isn't that the end of the business day, though? Everyone goes home.
Apparently not. So this is a weird open for our show. We had just finished recording Eagle Eye, and then we found out that, well, Boston Scott was back, or we knew that during when we recorded. I don't even remember. But Boston Scott's back, and James Bradberry's back on a 3-year deal. That's the big one. So we figured we'd hop back on, talk about James Bradberry, and then we'll let you guys get to the normal podcast.
Yeah, I think that works. It might not be the smoothest transition ever, but we give you all the information no matter when it happens.
That's fair. Bradberry.
Yeah.
Surprising here. We thought he was gone. A lot of people thought he was gone. He always left open the possibility. I didn't think this would happen. This is a surprising move.
It is, and the number is lower than I thought. I think, and we, I think as time went on, and it hasn't been a lot of time. And free agency or the legal tampering period is only 30 hours in. But when he didn't get signed anywhere in that initial flurry, and then Monday ended, he didn't sign anywhere. And then we got through a big chunk of Tuesday and he hadn't signed anywhere. I think the longer it went, the more you thought, well, maybe he's not getting the offers that we expected, that he expected. And as time goes on, his number comes down. And as his number comes down, it gets closer and closer to where Howie is. And it came down to the point where Howie was, and he's an Eagle. And I think with any of these guys, the longer it goes on without them signing anywhere or agreeing anywhere, the better the odds are they'll come back, that the numbers will start to make more sense. You never know exactly who's going to get the big deals and who's not going to get what they expected. I thought he'd be more in the $15 million range. He made it clear he was going to take the money, but he also wants to win. The money was going to be the biggest factor with him. He could have gotten slightly more, maybe in an offer, and not with a winning team. We will find out eventually, but I am surprised. And, Howie had a number. We talked so much about where is that number, and it was about $13 million a year. I never thought look, that's a lot of money, but I never thought he'd get $13 million. That would be that low. Really good player, really good move. Big surprise.
Yeah, so the terms of the contract, these are from ESPN, 3 years, $38 million, 20 guaranteed. That comes out to under $13 million APY. That makes him the 16th highest paid cornerback in the NFL. And there are not 15 cornerbacks better than him in the league. So you feel pretty good about it. And we already know that he took some less money. This was to Josina Anderson. I went back because of the familiarity with the coaching staff, because I love the city and playing for the Eagles. They also gave me a deal around what I was looking for. Yes, there were other teams that offered me more, but I feel like Philly fit me the best. I'm sure it wasn't a major discount, but I think familiarity does matter, and it looks like it mattered here a little bit.
I'm trying to figure out what coaches are here that he's familiar with. I guess
the head coach.
The head coach and DK, that's about it. He's not a guy that I talked to him a lot at the Super Bowl about this. He said it's going to come down to money. And then at his locker on locker cleanout day, he said, well, it's going to be a combination of a winning franchise, a chance to win, and money. And he said, I can't really say what percent of which, but it's going to be a combination of those two things. And I think that's when I first thought maybe there was a small chance he would be back. And then when he told Josina the other day that that the Eagles had asked to have the opportunity to match whatever offer he got, that showed at least the lines of communication were open, that there was mutual interest, that the Eagles, that Howie thought there was a realistic chance that he could do this. Because, look, Howie knew it wasn't going to be $6 million, $8 million, $10 million when he told Bradberry, look, get back to us with any offer. He knew it was going to be, double digits plus in millions in average annual. So That gave you a little optimism, but I still thought it was a long shot, and we talked about that. This is a huge move, and they're losing so much on that defense. To have him back, to have BG back, to have Reddick, to have Sweat. You've got some pieces now on defense. Slay, I'm going to presume that he'll be back. There's some pieces now. You've lost some guys, and certainly Hargrave will hurt, but this is really big.
All right, so let's talk about Slay. What do you think this means for him? If you guys haven't been following this last week, the Eagles granted his agent permission to seek a trade. Darius Slay said he did not request a trade. This is really it's an important distinction, though, because this is basically a maneuver to try to get more money out of the Eagles and try to get another year, because this is a contract year for him. It seems unlikely that they'd trade him, but is it any more likely now that Bradberry's back?
I don't think so, because it's not like they would clear $20 million in cap space by trading him.
Yeah, it'd be like 3.7 if they trade him before June 1st.
Yeah, so why would they do that? I think he wants to be here and they want him here. And 99% of the time, when you have those two things, they find a way to get it done. The times it's not done is when the player really does want to be here or the team really wants to move on from the player. But it seems like Slay wants to be here. He wants to be an Eagle. I think having Bradberry, I mean, they've become very close off the field, as well as, really there's a lot of mutual respect there on the field. I mean, at the Super Bowl, I mean, I was going back and forth from Slay to Bradberry, and it was just like a mutual admiration society. It's really cool, especially for a team that hasn't had two good corners in quite some time. So I don't think he's going anywhere. I think that they'll figure out a way to make the numbers work, and they'll both be here. I'd be surprised if that's not the case.
I'm kind of with you there. And we talked, before last season that this had the potential to be one of the best cornerback duos in Eagles history. We just didn't think they were going to get the chance to play together long enough. And I kind of went the entire season thinking that Bradberry got this 1-year deal. And the only reason he was here was because it was so late in the process. He got just $7.5 million last year, which was quite a bargain for the Eagles. And he felt like they're just renting him for a year and he's going to move on. So I was slower. Like, even when I heard the stuff about them potentially, in my head, he was already gone. So I was surprised on Tuesday. Yeah,
I mean, I'm still surprised. I tell you what, one thing it does, well, two things it does. Zach McPherson's got to be thinking, man, 2 years in a row, I thought I was going to have a chance to be a starter. But also, it gives Howie, and look, I know Howie's always going to say he's drafting, best player and not for need. But you don't have to even think about reaching for a corner now, wherever it is, whether it's at 10 or at 30 or the second round. They still might take a corner. You have two corners who are in their 30s. I think Bradberry's 29, but who will be in their 30s when the season starts. Slay's only under contract for one more year. We'll see what happens there. But either way, you're going to need to replenish the roster with a young corner. So they could take a corner, but they don't have to. I know it'll change my mock draft.
All those mock drafts pre-free agency, just throw them in a fire.
That's why you don't get started. Don't get me started on mock drafts. But, I mean, it really does give Howie more flexibility on draft day to really to really go out and get the player. Because the positions where they seem most desperate, linebacker, safety, he's not going to draft those anyway. So, he doesn't have to reach for a corner now, and that's great. He might still take one, but doesn't have to.
Last thing, does this mean C.J. Gardner-Johnson's gone? It's hard to imagine them putting money into both of those players.
Yeah, especially after the Kelce contract and this contract. I just don't think the money's there, and that. I think it now becomes almost an impossibility. And look, if you had your choice of Bradberry or Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, if it was one or the other, you'd probably take Bradberry.
Would you?
Yeah.
All things considered,
I think he's the more consistent player, and I really like Chauncey's game.
the age for me is what would differentiate. You're
Yeah,
talking about a
he's
25-year-old player who's ascending
He's 4
versus a
years
29-year-old guy.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I think for me, the position, the consistency, is that what you want about Chauncey Gardner-Johnson? He's a great playmaker. The 6 interceptions was an anomaly. I don't know if he's a guy who's going to get you 6 every year. Maybe he will. But he's not a great tackler. I just think Bradberry's just such a consistent guy. The position probably makes a difference. I love CJ's versatility. I don't know. It's a tough call. I'd probably take Bradberry.
Yeah, I would look, we'll see what the numbers look like, but there's all these different factors. I'd probably balance it out to prioritize CJ. And I've said that since before free agency, but getting Bradberry back is huge. It's a big deal. And sometimes the timing doesn't work out either. If the one guy's not ready to sign, you have the money, you got to do it. And They did it.
Yep.
All right, let's get to the regular pod. It's already a busy week. We haven't even technically begun free agency yet.
Yeah, you think it's busy now. Just wait till free agency starts tomorrow.
Yeah, and there's nothing happening because everything else is already done. That's pretty much the way this works.
It is.
This is the Eagle Eye Podcast. He's Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. A lot to get into today. At around, 1 o'clock, I was like, Reuben, are we going to even do a podcast today? Nothing's happened. A bunch has happened since then. So we have plenty to talk about. And a bunch of players going, one player arriving. We'll talk about some of the other things around the league. Some contract details for some former Eagles have come out. But we'll start with the first outside signing of free agency for the Birds, Rashaad Penny.
Rashaad Penny, interesting player, really, really talented, has had just a ton of injury issues, has never played a full season. He's only averaged 7 games per season over the last 4 years, but when he's healthy, he's explosive player. 5.7 career rushing average is 4th highest ever among running backs. So it's just a matter of trying to get him on the field and keep him on the field. When you can do that, he's a really good player. Had 350-yard games over the last 2 years, which only 2 other running backs have done in the league. So when he's healthy, he's as talented as anybody. He's not a big-time receiver. He's never caught the ball much. But as a pure runner, he's really, really talented. And kind of out of the blue, he's a guy who, again, he's one of the few first-round running backs in the league. There's just not that many of them anymore. This is why, because of injuries, because they have a limited shelf life. They tend to get hurt a lot. He will be, when he plays, only the 3rd first-round running back to play for the Eagles in the last 30 years, along with Ryan Matthews and Ronnie Brown. So pretty elite. He's kind of like Ryan Matthews in a lot of ways, really talented, off injured, late first-round pick. Eagles haven't had a first-round pick rush for 1,000 yards in a season since Steve Van Buren, 1949. And I remember that was really exciting, whether he was going to get it or not the last couple of weeks of the season, trying to, see if he would make it there.
Yeah, you kept sliding those balls over on the abacus.
Yeah, and there were more balls than doors too, but that's another conversation from another show. Anyway, it's an interesting sign. We haven't seen the numbers yet; they haven't come out yet. He's a guy. He played his rookie deal, and then they signed him to 1 more year in Seattle. So he's played 5 years in Seattle. Just hasn't played very much. He's played 42 games in his career. So we'll see. I would assume the money's not super high. He's a running back, first of all, and the injury history, second of all. But it's a risky move because you don't know how much you'll get out of him. But it's got a guy with certainly a high ceiling if you can keep him on the field.
Yeah, I don't know how risky it is because we haven't seen the numbers. I can't imagine it'll be very.
No, I shouldn't say risky, but as far as the payoff, you just don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a low risk, high reward move. Now it's funny in a way because I look at him and he's a better pure runner than Miles Sanders. He just is.
Yeah.
but we talked about Sanders not being able to stay on the field. I mean, Sanders is like the picture of health compared to Rashaad Penny, who's just, I mean, he is a north-south runner. You're right. He doesn't catch the ball very well, or at least he hasn't been asked to do it. But the rushing numbers, just, he's a great runner. And the thought of putting him behind this offensive line is like, man, he could be like, he's Pro Bowl caliber player behind this line. But it's always going to come back to the if with him. It's if he's healthy, and he hasn't proven that he can stay healthy. So until he does that, he hasn't done it. You know, you can't really bank on him. But the potential is there for him to just be a monster in this run game. He's so good after contact, like all the metrics of yards over expected, top in the NFL since 2021, according to Next Gen Stats. 4.23 yards after contact last year. And he got hurt so early in the year, but like before he got hurt, he was on pace to have an incredible season.
Yeah, and 2 years ago, he had his best year. I think he played a career high 11 games or something. He had 700 some odd yards.
He played 14 as a rookie.
Played 14 as a rookie, you're right. But he led the NFL with 6.2 yards a carry. I mean, he kind of reminds you a little bit of Mostert, who just re-signed in Miami. Just a guy who's never really – I think Mostert had 1 year where he was a regular, played every game, and he had over 1,000 yards. But guys who've just been hurt so much, but when they're healthy, they're just explosive, dynamic runners. Obviously, Mostert was here once upon a time, 2015, I think, at the beginning. But, yeah, it's an interesting move. And, we'll see what it means. Obviously, for starters, it means Miles Sanders won't be back. And Miles tweeted thank you to Eagles fans, which, look, he could see the writing on the wall. It's a shame. He finally got healthy and kind of priced himself out of being here. And I think the way the season ended didn't really help him. He wasn't great at the end of the year. I think it became really clear the last 2 months of the season he wouldn't be back, I think. He really wanted to. It's kind of a shame. He was begging Howie, I just want Howie to know I love him. But these are the tough decisions you have to make. And, if somebody's going to pay Miles Sanders $6 or $7 million, for a multi-year deal, I mean, there's no reason at all for the Eagles to do that. So they have Gainwell. Gainwell also tweeted something out. He seems confused about the move. I'm not sure why. I don't think anyone really looked at Kenny Gainwell, as talented as he is, as a 18, 20 carry a game guy. It's not really. I don't think that's really how he's best utilized. I'd be surprised if he expected to be that guy. But he's under contract. Boston Scott's not. We'll see what happens with him. And then you have the two kind of wild cards are Kennedy Brooks and Trey Sermon. Kennedy Brooks was a beast in Oklahoma. Sermon was on the 53 all year. It was a third-round pick of the Niners. And if you have a combination of Gainwell, Sermon, and Penny, that's a pretty formidable group. There's no real lead back, I guess. I guess it would be Penny if he's healthy. But knowing Nick and knowing Howie and the way they are, I don't think Rashaad Penny's going to get more than 10, 12 carries a game because they're going to want to try to keep him healthy. And you give him 23 carries, probably not going to happen. So I think we'll see some kind of rotation there, three-headed monster, if you will. I'm just guessing about Sermon. Who knows? And we don't even know if he'll be on the team. But they have some talented players at that position.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm Gainwell, I'm actually pretty happy about this, right? Like, they signed a guy to be the running back one, but he plays 7 games a year.
And he signed a 1-year deal, by the way, also.
Yeah.
And Kenny Gainwell's 23. And they really like him. I mean, he was their lead back in the playoffs in the Super Bowl. So I was really surprised at Gainwell's reaction. He's an emotional kid. We know that, and he's young. So I think when the dust settles, he'll understand he's going to have a significant role on this offense. He just might not be getting 20 carries a game. I don't think anyone will.
Yeah, I mean, by design, that wouldn't really make sense for a lot of reasons. One, like I don't think they have the running back to do that. And two, I think they see the benefit in, if you clearly don't have that guy, to not force it and to go with the rotation. You mentioned Sanders. I'm really curious to see what his deal ends up being because I get a sense it's not going to be that much. The running backs just aren't getting paid, and I think that I don't think he's going to get 6 or 7 million a year.
It's very well possible.
So, I wonder when we finally get to the point where he signs somewhere and we see the contract side by side. I'd imagine Penny's is going to be very minimal, but I wonder if we're going to play that game where we say, oh, they could have had Miles Sanders because that deal wasn't big and he wanted to be here. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I think there's a chance of that.
Yeah, I think so. I've said this all along. I really think his drop-off, which was significant over the last 2 months of the season, may have changed their plans. I don't know if they had any intention of re-signing him anyway, even before that, but when the guy's averaging 5+ per carry and it goes down to 3.9 per carry over 7 games, including a Super Bowl where he's not even in a game in the second half. And I know he had gotten banged up. We never really got any clarity on that. But, if you can't count on your lead back, your RB1 in a Super Bowl or at the end of the season in a big game, maybe it's time to get another one. And I like the player. I like Miles, but he did drop off.
Yeah, I don't know if that negatively affected his chances of coming back. I think it was unlikely he was ever going to come back. You could argue that it increased his chances of coming back because it could have theoretically dropped his price tag.
But I think they moved on, regardless of price.
Maybe, but then it's irrelevant.
And I also think their analytics might tell them, like, how many career carries does Miles have? Let me see here real quick. Their analytics, they're big on analytics, might have told them 739 carries and how many catches? 124. So like 900 touches into his career. That he, his production was going to go down. That at that point, running backs have that limited shelf life we talk about. So they might have looked at him as a guy who the odds were was not going to continue ascending or continue on the same level.
Yeah, maybe. Do you think they're done at running back?
Yes, I do.
Interesting. I don't know if they are.
I mean, I think they could draft somebody, but but that would. I mean, if there's a player, I don't think it's going to be super early, but I wouldn't be surprised if they draft someone and then let it all sort out. I really think they're high on Sermon. I could be totally wrong. I gave you my theory the other day, but I could be dead wrong on that. But there's got to be a reason they had him on the roster all year and he had 2 carries. I think they might want to get a good long look at him in camp and see if they have something.
I like that you only think that about Trey Sermon and not Janarius Robinson or Ian Book.
Oh no, I think Janarius Robinson could be. I just wrote his name down. I was looking at all the edge rushers they have.
Yeah.
No, I mean he's a guy who's played in the league. Yeah, but I mean I think quarterbacks are different. I don't think anyone really looks at Ian Book. I mean, plus you only have one quarterback that plays, so I don't think Ian Book is going to be a starting quarterback. But anyway,
I wouldn't close the book on that.
I'm not going to give you a sermon on bad puns.
It's well played. Yeah, we'll see. I am fascinated by the Penny signing, though. I really am. Like, he's a player who I've enjoyed watching from afar. And he was always a name, like, when he was on the end of that rookie contract where you're, like, looking for when the Eagles were – maybe they were running back away. Like, he was always a name that would come up on those lists. Like, maybe you trade for Penny, and it's just been the same thing with him for so many years. Like, hey, when he's healthy, he's really good, and he just never stays healthy. So,
yeah, I was going to tweet out something about how the only guy he could afford under the cap was a Penny, but it wasn't.
Workshop that one a little bit more.
Workshopped a little bit. Probably needs some work. Definitely.
All right.
That was a rough draft.
Yeah, that's the only outside signing so far. I wouldn't expect many more. I mean, they
Yeah.
just don't have a ton of cap space to work with. Um, One new player we know leaving from today, two from yesterday that we didn't get to on the last pod because they happened after we recorded. So let's talk about them first. I believe Andre Dillard and Marcus Epps both signed after we recorded our pod. Let's start with Dillard. He gets 3 years, 29 million from the Titans. I'd imagine he has a chance to be their, or probably will be their starting left tackle. I'm not surprised by that. He was I think when we did our lists of like who we thought was going to leave, he was right at the top of my list.
Yeah, he was. And I'm happy for him. I'm happy he's getting this opportunity. Sure wasn't going to get it here. He's handled the last couple of years well. I know he was frustrated. I know he wanted to play. But he's a first round pick. You want to prove yourself. But everybody's career goes at different pace. He had an untimely injury. Mulata comes out of nowhere and wins the job. And so he's been a backup. He learned guard. He was open to anything that would help the team. And the few times he got in and played, he played okay. He played well. So I think he'll be good down there. I think he's going to be a solid guy. And I wish him well. He's, it was a tough stretch for him here. I kind of people throw him on the first round bust heap with John Harris and Marcus Smith and Fireman Danny and Freddie Mitchell. And, I could keep going on, but I won't. But he doesn't really belong there to me. Kind of like Jermaine Mayberry, who got a kind of a slow start and got benched and eventually became a Pro Bowler at guard. So I think he'll be pretty good down there.
Yeah, it's a weird time for Dillard here because early on, I think it was a lot on him. I think he just lacked a lot of mental toughness. He wasn't ready to be in the NFL. Certainly wasn't ready to be in Philadelphia, and that showed. And I thought it wasn't like he was immature and that he was like goofing off or anything. I just think he didn't have the maturity to be a football player professionally in this city. And
he didn't handle criticism well.
Criticism well. I don't think he could handle his emotions well. And it got the best of him early. And then when it felt like he was finally starting to turn a corner. He's going to get a chance to be the starter. He gets hurt. He tears his biceps. He's out for the year. And then pretty bad luck for him that this giant rugby player the Eagles got from Australia ends up being a hell of a left tackle and just was better. It was just better than him and wins the job. And he never really got that opportunity. So I'm excited to see how he plays. I think he's going to be fine. I don't know if he'll ever be, a Pro Bowl caliber left tackle, but I think he can at least be an average starter in the league.
Or a little above average. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Next one, Marcus Epps. 2 years, $12 million. We'll get into his contract details a little bit more later, but goes to the Raiders. I thought there was a chance they'd bring him back, but I think we talked about the tier system, or at least what I'm thinking as the tiers. CJ Gardner-Johnson's probably the top guy they want. I think they still want him, and maybe they would have pivoted to Marcus Epps after they failed to get him, but with CJ still out there, Epps isn't waiting. He goes and gets a deal.
Yeah. It's more money than I would have paid him. He's an okay player. I'm not going to lose a lot of sleep. I put him in that same category as TJ. TJ's better than Epps at what he does, but they're the same. They're solid starters. They're hard workers. They're smart. They get the most out of their ability. They're coachable. They're team guys. They're unselfish, but you can replace them. Yeah. And ultimately, they will. Good for him. He plays hard. I thought he'd make more. We've talked about. I thought he'd make more splash plays this year. I thought he had 3 interceptions before he was a full-time starter. He didn't have any this year. No sacks. He's not that kind of player. I thought he'd be a better blitzer. Jonathan Gannon didn't seem to blitz much. I did notice that. But another one who, you see that number and you're like, there was no way. $6 million. Those $6 million add up. And
They do. I think you have to be really careful about overpaying average players in free agency.
yeah, there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, it's like you're paying going rate, and it ends up being overpaying. And if you're a team that's not in that position, you really can't do it. Well, I also put Epps in the TJ category that I think if Gannon was still here, there's a better shot that those two are back.
Yeah, and that's something you said back before free agency even started, and you certainly could be right.
Well, even if I'm not right, we'll never know. So I'll take that victory.
Gannon loved Epps. I remember talking to Gannon out. I think it was the Thursday before the Super Bowl out at the team hotel, and he was just talking about how complicated his defense is and how not many safeties could really function at a high level with all the the different stuff they have to process. And he said Epps could do it better than anybody. Really liked him, not enough to sign him, not enough to bring him to the Cards, but yeah. And again, I mean, we don't know what kind of safeties, what kind of linebackers Sean Desai likes or wants, and I guess we'll start to learn that soon, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, there's less of a reason to bring your own players back if they don't fit or there's no relationship there with the coaching staff. So,
or if they're getting $6-7 million a year.
Well, that doesn't hurt. But speaking of the Cardinals, you mentioned Jonathan Gannon, Kaiser White reunion with Gannon in Arizona. That's the one we learned, about 45 minutes before we started recording this. Not surprised he's leaving. I thought maybe his odds to come back increased a little bit once we found out TJ Edwards was gone. But ultimately, he goes to Arizona, 2-year deal, worth up to $11 million. I think there might be some tricky math going on there. I don't know exactly what that deal is going to really look like, but any surprise he's not back?
No, not really. Again, I don't think he had a super consistent year. And by the way, his position coach is there as well. His position coach from here is Nick Rallis, but coordinator there now. But no, I didn't think he was that good. I thought he was okay. I thought he'd be better. I thought he'd make more plays. He had some really good games. He had some games where you're like, wow, really active. He runs around, but I just didn't think he was that good. These guys are all – look, Hargrave, you don't just replace a Hargrave, although I wouldn't have given him $84 million at 30. But Epps, Kaiser, TJ, I mean, the reality is you can replace those guys, and they're going to have to.
Rube, this is good timing. Some news here.
What do you got?
Tom Pelissero. Eagles were not done in the backfield. Boston Scott's back. $2 million deal with the Eagles.
Not surprised.
That's a good running back rotation. Kenny Gainwell, Rashaad Penny, Boston Scott, and then maybe Trey Sermon.
Kennedy Brooks.
Probably not Kennedy Brooks. But,
Kennedy Brooks.
But
I like Boston Scott. I think he's a good little player. We saw what he could do on kick returns the last whatever month, 6 weeks of the season. He was really good kick returner. I'm sure the Giants aren't real happy to have him back in the NFC East. But yeah, he's a nice player, good goal line back. He's got like 19 career touchdowns. He's never been a full-time starter. 10 of them against the Giants, but he's scored 9 against everyone else. That is a good running back room. It'll be interesting to see if they throw a little more to the backs. I'm big on that. I know Gainwell can catch and Boston can catch, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing about Penny is that he hasn't caught the ball very much in the NFL, and you don't want to tip it too much. Like, Rashaad's out there, oh, they're going to run. Gainwell's out there, oh, they're going to throw. I think you have to at least find some bit of balance.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember talking to LeGarrette when he got here. Like, LeGarrette, you've only caught 5 passes in your career. He's like, oh, I can catch. It's like, no, you can't.
Yeah. So another little bit of news: Stephon Gilmore traded to the Cowboys. That's interesting. So they have Stephon Gilmore and they still have Diggs. I mean, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know much. I mean, Gilmore's not what he once was, but he's still a pretty good player.
Not sure Diggs is what he once was, but yeah, he's good. He's not elite anymore.
How about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Would they give up? Do we know yet?
I don't know that just yet. This is the funny thing doing this. A 5th round compensatory pick.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess it's a salary dump.
Yeah, Gilmore's 32.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, it's fun doing a podcast when things are just happening while we're doing it. But I'd rather them happen while we're doing it than the second we stop doing it, which will probably
happen too.
Yeah, it happened yesterday, so it'll probably happen again today. Jason Kelce, we have contract terms there. We don't know exactly the structure of it, but it's a big deal. He got $14 million last year. This year he gets a modest pay bump, $250,000 added to that. It's a big deal, but it's the rate. He's the best center in the NFL. I think it does matter to him and his agent to be the top center in the league, and he is again. It's still worth it to me.
Yeah, it's a tricky deal because they don't really have that kind of money. I mean, they do make it. You figure it out, and I mean, Howie had that kind of earmarked for him if he wanted to come back. But it's a lot of money for a team that is kind of strapped right now. But it's worth every penny to have him here. So,
and I see some people like suggesting he should take a pay cut. No, he shouldn't.
No,
he shouldn't. That's the going rate. He's the best center in the league. He's 35. He's putting his future on the line by playing football another year. He deserves to be compensated fairly.
Absolutely. I think every player should get every penny they can get, every chance they can get. And that includes Jalen Hurts. Careers are way too short. They could end at any time. And
I see people trying to draw the comparison. Well, Brandon Graham did it. Brandon Graham didn't do it for the Eagles. He did it for himself because he wanted to be here. And that's what it was going to take for him to be here.
Right.
That there's a difference. It's not like Brandon Graham said, I want to help the Eagles out. Now, I'm not saying he wouldn't do that. I don't know if he would do that, but that's not the reason he did it. He did it because if he didn't do it, he wouldn't be here.
Exactly.
Whereas like Kelce is the best center in the league. And if you're not paying Jason Kelce, like there's nothing better that money could go toward.
Right. Right. If you could have Jason Kelce or James Bradberry, you take Kelce.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No brainer.
Yeah. Now, it was fun to think, well, if he retires, then you have this money and then your plan changes, but you'd rather have him. And you have him. And they'll structure it in a way. We don't, like I said, we don't know the structure yet, but last year he had it was a 1-year, $14 million deal. His cap hit was just over 8. So I'd imagine we'll see something very similar. They'll put avoidable years on there. They'll pay most of it out in a signing bonus or maybe a roster bonus, and they'll spread it out over the length of 5 years when he'll be long retired and his podcast will be the #1 podcast in the world. And
it already is.
I know it is. It's really good. I was listening to his Daniel Jeremiah interview, and I really respect DJ. I think he does a great job, and it was fun to hear someone from the scouting background and a player talking about traits. They were like going pretty deep into like trench play, but it was fun to listen to it because it's like 2 different viewpoints on the same thing. And some things they like kind of agreed on. Some things were, look at me just plugging another podcast on our podcast.
Too bad you don't care that much about our podcast.
There's a little higher level discussion going on the other one. We're trying to come up with sermon puns. Those are the details on the Kelce deal. Look, it's a lot, but given the choice, you want him, and I don't blame them for doing it. I don't blame him for taking all the money he can get, and ultimately, like, look, maybe his body finally breaks down this year, and you get 5 games out of him, and we all go, "Oh, that was a waste." Willing to take that shot.
Don't even say that.
Oh, do you believe in putting like mystical things happening? I'm putting it into the world.
No, I don't. I don't know. Anyway, what else?
That's all for Kelce. Let's get to this read, and then we'll talk about some contract stuff on the other side. Catch all the sports action and more at Rivers Casino Philadelphia. Whether it's the money line or the pass line, there's something for everyone in a great sports book. Rivers Casino Philadelphia. Philly loves a winner. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, Rube. I have some contract details for 3 of the Eagles free agents who left. Javon Hargrave, TJ Edwards, Marcus Epps. We don't have to go too deep into them, but I want to get your thoughts on a few of these details. We'll start with Hargrave. That was the biggest one. 4 years, $84 million. The total guarantee, $40 million. The signing bonus, $23 million. Another option bonus on top of that, 2 void years. So the cap hits down a little bit, but it's a legit deal. It's expensive.
Yeah, and good for him. You know, I think you made the point the other day. He'll be older at the end of this deal than Fletcher. He'll be 2 years older at the end of this deal than Fletcher is now. And we've seen the way Fletcher's declined. So yeah, I wouldn't pay that much for Javon Hargrave as much as I think of him as a player now. This is not a contract for now. It's a contract for 23, 24, 25, and 26. So we'll see if it, we'll see how he holds up over the next 4 years and where his career goes. But it's a risky move for a guy in his 30s.
It is, and give him credit. Like I'm curious to see the role he has next to Armstead in the middle of that defense. The Eagles ran the ball right down their throats in that NFC Championship game, so that's job one for Hargrave. I think is solidify the middle of that line. I think he will. I think he's a really good player. The Eagles. At what point do you think the Eagles were out? This got up to $21 million a year.
Man, that's a great question.
Like 17, 18?
Yeah, I mean, I think they might have been out before it even started. I think they knew. I think Howie knew he was going to be in that 18 to 20 range, or if not a little more, as it turned out. And I just don't think they were going to do that.
Yeah, you're probably right. Marcus Epps, 2 years, $12 million. The guaranteed at signing here is actually under $8 million. So there's a chance he's not with the Raiders next year. I think there's a good chance he is still there, but it's not a true 2 year, $12 million deal. But I still don't think this is a deal I necessarily would have done if I'm the Eagles.
I wouldn't have. Yeah, I mean, if I was the Eagles in the position they're in, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I would have either.
Now, the next one,
yeah,
I feel differently about. TJ Edwards, 3 years, $19.5 million, total guarantee of a little over 12, signing bonus of 4.5. This is a manageable deal. I know you have Nakobe Dean, and I'm thinking that was their thought process is we have this kid that we really like. We want him to just be the starting Mike linebacker. I would have thought about bringing TJ back on this deal. I might have done it.
Yeah, it happened so fast. 15 minutes into free agency that tells you they just were not involved in it. I mean, that's not even enough time to get the offer, call the Eagles, and get Howie on the phone.
Do you think it was? I wonder how much of it was him just wanting to go home.
That seems like it could have been a big part of it.
Like, I wonder if he would have accepted a 3 year, $19.5 million deal from the Eagles.
Good question. I don't know the answer to that. Certainly a better chance to win here than there. They haven't won that 1 year they had under what's his name, but the double doink year was that 18. That's the last winning season. Matt Nagy. Yeah, interesting. It is manageable, and he's a younger guy. I'm not going to lose a lot of sleep over losing him. But yeah, those are good questions. I wonder if he'll answer those when he meets with the media in Chicago. But he is from the suburbs of Chicago, or just north of the suburbs of Chicago.
I can't do it again.
No, I don't know. It's a good question, but it happened so fast. That tells me. I mean, it was literally 15 minutes after this started. So I just don't see logistically how they could have had any involvement in it. And, if he gave them the chance to match or I mean, the whole process would have taken more than 15 minutes.
I'm just amazed that they were able to come up with a 3-year contract in 15 minutes. Isn't that amazing how quickly agents and teams can work once they're legally allowed to do so?
Are you implying that there may be tampering involved?
I would never do that. Everyone in the NFL plays it by the book. That's the one thing I've learned being around this league.
Well, it's funny, when they started the legal tampering, it was like there were deals getting done at 12:01, and I was like, all right, this is a little ridiculous here.
This year, you're right. It was like 12:15-ish. They started coming out. Do you think that was like the NFL? Like, guys, just try to make it look like
15 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the TJ deal happened at 12:16 yesterday, Tuesday. So
still pretty quick.
Monday. Yeah. Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
Who's the other linebacker?
It's a great question. What do you think?
I mean, we can pencil in Kobe at the mic, but like they don't have a ton of options in-house. They have Sean Bradley, Davion Taylor, Christian Ellis. Those are the options in-house.
Yeah. Christian Ellis is an intriguing guy to me. Obviously, it's kind of a long shot whether he could, win that job. But right now, I mean, Davion is probably the most experienced out of them.
And his college coach is now linebackers coach.
It's true. I'm not sure if that's enough to help him. But yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we went through this last year with cornerbacks. Like, who's our quarterback going to be? But I'm sure Howie has a plan.
Yeah, there are still some names out there on the free agency market. I don't know if any of them make sense. Like, if they weren't going to spend $6.5 million on TJ Edwards per year, I don't know if they're going to spend it on someone else.
Yeah, but if numbers come down quickly once we get through like the first 4 days of this, you get a guy for $4 million. We'll see.
Yeah, I was interested in Al-Shaair from 49ers, but he just signed with the Titans.
Did we see numbers on him?
I haven't seen numbers yet. That might be out while we're recording. It happened like shortly before we started. Right.
Yeah, I saw that.
He was one of the names that kind of stuck out to me. Like Levante David is out there. He's going to be cost a ton, I would think.
Yeah.
Some other names, Bobby Wagner. I think Van Der Esch is still out there.
Is he?
I think. Yeah, so there's like some other names. I probably should have looked up more of them. But like, if you're not going to spend it on the guy you had, I don't know if you're spending it on an outside guy.
Yeah. Or inside guy.
True. I had on my list here of things to talk about any interest in Austin Eckler, who might be traded, but running back room might be a little full right now.
Yeah, I would think they're done at that position. Eckler was an intriguing guy, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah, probably not. I guess you never know. Maybe they're Penny's such a cheap deal. They're like, we're not tied to him. We can still make more moves.
I'm really curious what that Penny number is going to be. It's got to be really low, right?
I don't think so. Yeah. We'll see. Next thing, Darren Waller gets traded to the Giants. Don't know what to make of that move. He's a really good player. He's been hurt the last couple seasons. Has a pretty big contract. A very big contract. He's also 31, I think.
Yeah. So
I think that'll help them, but you never know. I don't know how it's going to work out.
Yeah, he hasn't been good in a couple of years. What is he? 30. He's just 30. He had those 2 great years, just kind of out of nowhere. He started out with the Ravens and didn't catch any passes, and then in 19 and 20 caught 90 and 107 and had back-to-back 1,100-yard seasons. And then he's just been hurt the last 2 years, and when he's been healthy, he really hasn't produced that much either. So,
and he's basically been a receiver. Like he's a move tight end. He just yeah. But he's a good player. If he can, I mean, similar to Penny, if he can stay healthy, it's not a bad move for the Giants. It'll help Daniel Jones and maximize him a little bit.
And Eagles have Davion Taylor to cover him.
That would help too. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, you get him 3 years ago. It's a great move. Right now, I'm not sure.
Well, 3 years ago, he's not available.
Yeah, well, I understand that. But I'm just saying, I think his best days are behind him.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Fair. Last thing, non-Eagles. Have you been following this Aaron Rodgers saga?
No. What's up with him? Is he with the Packers still?
He is with the Packers. It's been crazy. It's like, will he go to the Jets? Like, all signs are pointing toward him going to the Jets, but like with that guy, you just never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I thought he was going to emerge from the darkness and, make that decision. It's been like 4 or 5 days of lightness now, and I'm afraid that it's kind of going to spoil the whole dark mood, and he won't really know what to do.
It's like now we're seeing them basically try to recreate the Packers offense in New York. They just signed
Dorsey Levens.
Well, I got off one of those jokes today too. There were a lot of those floating around, but I mean, it's what do you make of that though? Like, I think ESPN reported he gave them a list of free agents to go after before he's even a member of the team,
right?
Like, would you be worried about giving one player that kind of power in the building?
Yes. You saw what happened when Favre went to the Jets. He had his own office and all that stuff.
I mean, Russell Wilson last year in Denver, like they gave him a ton of power and it was just blew up in their face.
Yeah.
I mean, I know he's a special player, and I know the Jets are a franchise. It's like they need a win. They need something. And they need a quarterback because they had a really good draft last year, and it seems like they're like going in the right direction with that stuff. But man, to like turn over your franchise to this guy who's a great player, but also like might not be totally into this anymore.
If I'm Joe Douglas, I'd be concerned. Yes.
And at this point, it's like all the eggs are in that basket.
Yeah. I mean, everybody else is gone. I mean, Mike White's gone, for crying out loud. Yeah. But see, what are they going to do? Start Flacco? Well, he's a free agent.
He's a free agent too.
Yeah. I don't know what plan B is. I don't know.
Let me run
because Rodgers could just say, you know what? I'm going to retire.
I don't think he would. Like, I think he's going to be a Jet, but like, gosh, it's already taking longer than it should. And I know that it's like he might not look at it that way, but like the whole football world is watching him. Like his likely future teammates in New York are probably like, what's happening? Are you coming here or not, dude?
Yeah.
Real quick, let me run down the list of Eagles who are still free agents.
Sure.
Real quick. Gardner Minshew, Zach Pascal, Isaac Seumalo, James Bradberry, Fletcher Cox, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Linval Joseph, Robert Quinn, and Ndamukong Suh. Still a lot of guys out there.
And how about if I run down everyone the Eagles have under contract on defense? It won't take long.
That would take shorter time than this.
They have a lot of edge. They have a lot of edge rushers: Sweat, Graham, Reddick, Barnett, Patrick Johnson, all the Johnsons, Janarius Robinson. Interior linemen: Milton Williams, Jordan Davis, Tui Pelotu, Marvin Wilson still here. Off-ball linebacker, Sean Bradley from Rancocas Valley, Christian Ellis, Davion Taylor, N'Kobe. Corners: Slays, Zach McPherson, Josh Jobe. You have the slot guys: Maddox, Josiah Scott, Mario Goodrich is here under contract. Safeties, not many safeties. Blankenship, Kayvon, and Andre Sachare. I think that's it. That's your defense. Who's the oldest guy in that group? I guess Reddick. Well, BG. BG's a little older, but there's not many guys over like 26 in that group.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see the reconstruction of that defense over the next few months.
Yeah, really.
All right, should we wrap this up? Because
we're probably any Super Bowl defense has ever lost as many starters as this one is in the process of losing.
Is that right?
I don't know. I'm curious. I'll probably end up looking it up, and I wish I wouldn't.
Now you have to.
I pretty much
you're on a limb. Now you have to do it.
All right.
Yeah, if you guys enjoyed the Eagle Eye Podcast, please rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe there as well and click the like button. That really does help. I know I read that stuff every week, and You guys probably aren't even listening anymore, but if you are, please do that. It does help us, and we appreciate it. All right, that's it for Reuben. I'm Dave. This has been Eagle Eye. We'll talk to you soon.